Okay, hey everyone. Today I'm going to show you a technique on how to round called stars and bosses. It's my favorite way to learn how to round, and I'm finding in 4th grade in elementary school, as long as you've got a catchy name and a good story, you can teach kids just about anything. So here's how this works. When kids come into my classroom rounding, they're usually pretty good if I give them a number like 57. They can pretty easily go, if I was going to round it, they go, oh, I would turn that into 60 because it's closest to being 60. You know, I would give them a number like 175 even. They're pretty good at saying, oh, okay, well, that's like 200. Maybe some kids will say 180. And I'll say, well, how did you get two different answers for the same thing? Well, I rounded to a different place value. Oh, cool, you can round the different place values. Awesome. Let's take it a little bit further, and I'll say, okay, what if I give you this number? Let's round that. They'll say, okay, maybe that would round to 1,000,000. I go, well, I don't want to round to the millions place. I want to round to the thousands place. Oh, just got a little bit more difficult. Stars and bosses will help you be able to round to any place value. So let's get started with it, and I'll show you how it works. Let's start off with a smaller number, and usually a number where we know where this answer is going to go. So let's go about 1,823. And we'll talk about what stars and bosses are. Now when I think of stars, I think of the Hollywood movie stars. They're out getting their pictures taken on the red carpet. You know, they're waving at people, they're on the cover of magazines, everybody wants to see the star, everybody's shouting their names, come see me, hey, come over here, I want to take your picture. Bosses. Bosses are the people behind the scenes. Maybe they're on their cell phone to a magazine cover, maybe they're telling their star, here, step over here so you can get your picture taken, maybe they're saying, come over here, I got an interview I want you to do. So the bosses are the person behind the scene telling the star what to do to keep that star nice and famous. Okay? So, when I want to identify the star, all I got to do is listen for their name. So I'm going to say, let's round to the thousands place. What'd you hear? I heard thousands place. I just told you who the star was. So we're going to put a star above the thousands place. Now the boss, I told you, the boss is the guy behind the scenes. He stands right behind the star. He wants to stay close so he can tell that star what to do. And he stands right here. Well, now we're going to talk about the two different kinds of bosses we have. We either have real strong bosses, and these are bosses that know what they're doing, they get stuff done, they cause change, they're going to cause our star to get bigger, get more famous. Well, our strong bosses are going to go from 5 to 9. These are our strong bosses, and they're going to cause our star to get bigger by 1. But you also have weak bosses. They don't get a lot done, they're very timid, they're scared, they're not getting me on magazine covers. I'm just going to stay the same, I'm not getting any more famous. And that's going to be 4 down to 0, and I just write STS. And we make sure that we know there's only 2 things that we are doing. We are either going to get bigger by 1, or we're going to stay the same. There's no getting smaller. Let's get bigger by 1, or stay the same. So let's look at this. 8. What kind of a boss is 8? Well, 8's going to be probably way up here, and we'll say 8's a pretty strong boss. This is a dude that gets things done. He's getting things done. I trust this guy. He's going to make me more famous. So 8's going to tell this 1 to get bigger by 1. And everybody else behind the star turns into a 0, because it's kind of like we're getting out of the way so they can get their picture taken and be famous. We want everybody to focus in on that too. Let's use this same number. And let's just change the place value we're going to round to. That's the cool thing with big numbers for teachers and for parents, is we can play with all different kinds of place values, never change the number, but come up with different answers. So let's round to the tens place this time. Alright, who'd you hear? I heard tens. I heard tens. There's our star. Star is the tens place. Now in this place, we're going to see the boss right behind him. The 3 is going to be the one telling the 2 what to do. Now we look over at our boss. What kind of a boss is this? Well, 3 is right here. He's a pretty weak boss. He's not getting anything done. We're staying the same. So 3 tells the 2, nothing. Stays the same. Everybody in front of that 2 always stays the same. 2 is going to stay the same, and behind the 2 turns into zeros. 1,820. Now let's jump to one of the really gigantic numbers, the ones that we teachers in class really enjoy playing around with, because you can attack about 3 or 4 problems on just one number. So let's go with, how about out to the millions place? Just like that first problem we were looking at, let's do a gigantic number way out here. And now, let's choose a star. And I'm going to say, let's go to the 10,000s place. I don't want to go to the millions right now, that's too easy. Everybody can do the front end estimation. Let's do something in the middle here. It's a little bit more difficult. So I say 10,000s. Whose name did we hear him calling? We heard 10,000s. Star the 10,000s. You've just made your target of what we're looking at. The boss is always the person right behind the star. 8. 8's a pretty powerful boss. This guy gets things done. He's going to make that 6 get bigger. So everybody in front stays the same. The 6 is going to get bigger by 1. And everybody behind here now, the boss and everybody behind him, turns into zeros to get out of the way so we can bask in the glory of the famous 7 in the 10,000s place. Let's try one more before we finish up. Let's use the same number, and let's just try a different place value. Because now you're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. As a teacher, now I can assess their understanding of place value, but I can also assess their understanding of rounding. I can assess 2 different things at once, which is pretty cool. So let's see here. Let's go to, how about the hundreds place? Let's round to the hundreds place, because typically with a number this big, you wouldn't round to the hundreds place. Well, I'm seeing if you know your place values now. Okay, there's my place value. And there's my boss. 3, not a very strong boss. 3 is not very strong, he's not going to tell 2 anything. Everybody in front of the boss is going to stay what they are. This guy is going to stay the same, this star. And everybody behind turns into zeros. So there's stars and bosses. You can see I like it because I can practice rounding to any place value. I could go out to the 100 trillions if I wanted to, and sometimes with the kids we'll goof around and do that just to show that this technique works no matter what, because it helps us to just focus in on 2 place values, and then we work on the other stuff afterwards. So locating that star, locating that boss, and knowing what to do once we get there. And that's stars and bosses.